Hey, how's it going? Welcome to So You Got a Gun, episode number 2. We're going to be talking about choosing your first gun today. Alex, my co-host name is Matt. Matt, why don't you start us off today with dealing with our little brief safety briefing?
Hey guys, we're going to start our show out with a quick little safety brief for a little while. What we're going to do today is just talk briefly about always keeping your gun pointed in a safe direction. Now, this is going to be a situation dictates type of thing. It will depend on whether you're at home or you're at a gun range or you're somewhere out in public moving around in the world. You want to always have control of the muzzle, so the front of your gun where the end of the barrel is, and do the best you can to keep your mind tied to the end of that. Keep that from crossing any part of your body or crossing anybody else, anyone that you don't want to shoot. What do you think, Alex? Is that easy enough?
Yeah, it's pretty easy. I always elaborate a little bit more on that because I go into, always keep your gun pointed in a safe direction and not at things you are willing to kill, destroy, or purchase.
All right.
Because I know a few gun instructors that have holes in the sides of their very nice trucks. So I've always kind of elaborated onto that, just kind of be conscious of where that barrel is pointing. And one of the newest things I've heard a lot about recently is that idea of never barrel up. A lot of ranges are kind of training that idea. And I think it really breaks down to what you said, Matt, is situation dictates. If you're in a crowded room, sometimes the best idea is going to be putting that barrel up because there are people at your feet or in front of you or to the side of you. You've got to just be very aware of your surroundings and where that barrel's going at all times. And you have to look at the situation and go, oh, the only place I can put the barrel is this way or this way. Just keep an eye on it and keep it in a safe direction where you're not going to damage something or shoot someone you don't want to shoot. So,
absolutely agree with that. Absolutely. And there are 100 different scenarios that we could talk about for that, but that's not what tonight's show is about, Alex. What are we talking about tonight? You're muted, bud.
Yay, mute buttons are great. So we're going to go over the picking out and choosing of your first gun and some guidelines and some ideas on how to pick it out and just kind of some thought process to how to get into your first gun. I think the theme that we're going to be saying a lot of, and you're going to hear it probably way more than we want to say it, is going to be situation dictates. And that goes along with the idea of situation dictates the size of the gun, situation dictates the caliber, situation dictates what kind. Your situation may dictate something different than what my situation dictates. So that's kind of what we've got to learn a little bit about and kind of discuss. And what our goal is to get you to think about it and make your own decisions with really solid information behind it so you make a good decision.
Right. This is something I never asked you before. What was your first handgun, Alex? Like, with all the education you either did or didn't have, when you went into the gun shop 6 or 8 years ago, what did you get? What did you either know about or get talked into? Because I'll tell you mine, but I want to hear yours first.
Put me on the spot. So my first gun that I got was a Bersa Firestorm 45, which actually was a pretty good gun. You didn't have holsters for it, and you didn't have sights for it. But, man, it shot every time, and it was pretty accurate for being what it was.
Great. My first gun was, and I'm not saying that it's not okay if you have one, but I had a Springfield XD in 9mm. I think it was like the year that the gun came out, or maybe like the second year it was out. And it was, you know, I wasn't a gun guy. I didn't know anything about guns. I didn't grow up in a family where that was part of our lives. So it was, oh, okay, it's not a Glock. And for me, it was, well, it's not a Glock because I'm left-handed. And then at that time, a Glock was not conducive to a left-handed person at all. They're a little bit better now, but it wasn't a Glock. And I had safety features. It turned out to probably be the worst handgun I ever owned.
Yeah, I've heard similar stories. I originally was advised to get a 22, like a Ruger or something like that, and because I was wanting to carry, I didn't feel comfortable with the idea of carrying a 22. So I just kind of went with the best thing that I could afford at the time.
Okay. Well, and, you know, I think there were a couple of things that both of us did right in that situation, in those circumstances, right? We both got guns that were in calibers that are easy to come across, 45s and 9mm. You can find that stuff anywhere all the time. You can buy it in bulk. They have different options and, you know, endless options for target ammo and self-defense ammo, right?
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. I think when I got mine originally, like I've said in the first show, it was right during the kind of Obama administration scare. So ammo for any gun was pretty much impossible to come by at the time, or it was really expensive. So I chose a 45 just based off of that's sort of what everybody was carrying at the time. So I kind of wish I would have done a 9mm. Now later on in my education, I would have went that direction ahead. I think I like capacity more than I like knockdown. So
I agree with that. I guess you know, for this show, we won't get into the minutia of calibers and all that, but you're right. 9mm, you get more capacity, and you get some controllability depending on the gun, right? Felt recoil and things like that. So some things to consider when you're looking for your first gun is, well, here's what I like to tell people is don't look at price yet. Let's get some things out on the table that look like, well, shoot, let me back up. I'm very sorry. Let's first figure out, how do you think that you're going to carry your gun? Like, are you a lady? Do you think you're going to carry it in your purse? Are you going to carry it on your waist, in your waistband? Then you got to kind of figure out what size do you think you can handle, like gun-wise. Like, how big or how small does this gun have to be? Then let's get some options out on the table. Let's see what feels good in your hand, right?
yeah, I found one of the things that I see a lot with a lot of the concealed carriers that I know is that there's a big nervousness about being able to conceal the pistol that you're curious or you're wanting to purchase. And I've seen a lot of ladies and men in the industry that are smaller framed that are perfectly capable of concealing pretty big guns. I'm trying to think of somebody off the top of my head. I had somebody in mind earlier today. I think it was Lil Chantilly from one of the other podcasts that talks about carrying a full-size 1911. That's her carry gun. And, you know, she's a petite-framed lady that carries it and conceals it. And so I think there's a little bit of a mythology that goes into being able to conceal a gun appropriately and thinking that you need to have an extra small one in order to conceal it well. There is some consideration to consider depending on what kind of clothing you wear. If you're a very professional person, the clothing tends to be more tighter fit, and that kind of comes into play when you're dealing with that size matters. But I think you can accomplish a good conceal with looking at different ways of carrying. If it's like a carrying, I can't think, like a belly band or a very specifically designed holster with a very good belt. A lot of that kind of thing will help with that, concealing that gun. But I see a lot of that as a fear base, that people are really nervous about, oh, I don't know if I'm going to be able to conceal this gun. And I think that's something that we've got to we can kind of talk about a little bit and get over the idea that you're probably going to be able to conceal a gun, even if it's on the larger side, as long as it's something that you can deal with the type of clothing that you wear. You got anything for that, Matt?
Absolutely. There are some definite things that even professionals can do, as far as if you want to carry a full size, 5-inch barreled full frame 1911, good on you. Again, like you said, tighter shirts, tighter pants, more form-fitting stuff. Things like plaids, that something that has a design to it breaks up the shape of a gun. Very few solid colors are able to do that. Black can. Very dark grays, like my nice Greenside training shirt, that actually does a pretty good job. But yeah, definitely. They don't even have to be dark colored plaids, but those lines, they help break up your magazine well, the frame of the gun around your waistband. If it's something you're wearing like athletic fit stuff, well then you're kind of out of luck carrying at least appendix wise in the front of your pants. If you wear a suit coat, you could probably get away with that a little bit better. There is a lady that I don't know her, but I kind of am aware of who she is. Her name is Tatiana Whitlock, and as far as I am aware, she's one of the better female instructors in the business. She's a small lady. She's when ladies start thinking about carrying a gun on their body, not in a purse, they start wondering, oh my gosh, my clothing, how am I going to do this? I've seen this woman. She's very pretty. She's fashionable. She looks great while she's hiding a gun. I mean, and honestly, I could say that comfortably right in front of my wife, because I'm trying to say, look she can do this. Anybody can. It just takes some figuring out how. And she does a great job with it. And, I would love to get into a class with her and just learn, I would love to learn from her, how, I can't think like a lady. I would love to have a woman teach me so I could give some ideas. Or, hey, if I just have to send every lady that comes to one of my classes to her, then I'm fine with that too. Take it away, Alex.
Yeah, she's a great instructor. I've seen a lot of her videos. That she's wonderful. I really like a lot of things she has to say. And I think the thing that we go back to is the situation dictates what kind of gun you're going to be carrying. If you are really concerned about your environment, meaning you're maybe in a non-permissible environment, so like your work may not like it if you carry a gun, that you're concerned that, yeah, if they see this, they might not want me to have it. I'm going to be fired if I have it, or whatever the situation is, then going to a smaller frame gun that you can hide more easily with a specifically designed holster may be what your situation needs. But for the most part, my strongest piece of advice is try to get the most appropriate size gun for what you're capable of handling as far as size. And there's two reasons for that. Is one, you're going to have greater capacity in the magazine. So if you're carrying a double stack as opposed to a single stack, you're going to get more capacity, which in this day and age, I think is very important. When we look at a lot of the workplace violence that's occurred in the past couple of years, the one that really comes to mind is the San Bernardino attack. There were 2 people involved with that attack. If you have a single stack gun, you're looking at 7, possibly 8 rounds. If you're looking at a double stacked gun, you're talking about 19 rounds, or right around there, depending on what gun you're shooting. And I really think that with the age that we have and the idea that we're seeing more and more partnerships in crime, as opposed to single individuals committing crimes, that capacity is really important. If you're going to carry single stack because that's the situation you have, learn to shoot that gun well, learn to do well-placed shots. That shot placement is super important. With any gun, and then the smaller calibers you get into, that becomes more and more important. And then also carry more magazines so that your capacity can be made up in the magazine side, and learn to do the reloads so that you're not sitting there with 8 rounds in a dead gun because you didn't carry an extra mag and you have another attacker that's there with you. The other incident that comes to mind was the Walmart shooting. I think that was about 3 years ago. The guy shot up a restaurant with some cops in it, walked across the street with his wife to the Walmart, and a concealed carrier attempted to confront him, and his wife came around the back and ended up killing the concealed carrier. That really wasn't a capacity issue, but what it's more pointing out is that we're seeing more of these crimes committed by multiple people instead of just one. So needing those extra rounds, I think, is pretty important.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the things that I hear a lot is, I'm going to get a revolver. And they have their place. They absolutely do. I have one. I have a couple of them. It's not something I carry. No, they have a very limited capacity, and they're slow to reload. You have to reload either, a little speed loader where you're lining up under stress. You're trying to dump out spent casings and, try and fiddle these, 5 or 6, whatever you got, bullets that are on this little key deal, trying to fish them in to your cylinder and close it up. Or you can take out the one magazine that's no longer worth anything to you and put in a new magazine that's got 8, 10, 12, 15, 16, however many rounds in it, and then continue forward. They're typically maybe not as comfortable to carry, but carrying a gun isn't supposed to be comfortable. It's not about comfort. It's about protection. I realize that we all have to live our lives and go from day to day, and it's not always comfortable to carry a gun, but it's a great idea to have it on you. What do you think of that, Alex?
Sorry, I was still muted there. Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think revolvers have their place. I like a revolver as a backup. I've seen a lot of information that kind of come around from a lot of the martial art combatants guys talking about close quarter work and the very slim chance of a contact hit with a semi-automatic taking the semi-automatic out of battery. I think those numbers and statistics are very small, but as a backup gun, I think revolvers have a place there. As a primary, I just don't think they have the capacity as a primary. If that's what you have, then, man, rock on with that. Learn to use it, learn to shoot it, learn to reload it, and carry that thing like that's what you're relying your life on, because you are. One of the things I wanted to kind of think about or discuss is the idea of what Matt was talking about is the comfort of it. One of the things that scares a lot of new people into carrying a firearm is that they're afraid that it's going to be a very uncomfortable situation. So they strap a gun on their hip and they go out and they spend a week or two with a gun someplace on them. And it's a new thing. It becomes a new experience. So it pokes in a weird spot, or it digs in their hip, or you haven't quite learned that you have to bend a different direction than you normally do. So they tend to want to shy away from it because it doesn't really hurt like it should. And I think it's important to give it a chance. Put your gun on where you're going to carry, whether it's a 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock appendix. I think really the only position that I don't suggest carrying in is in the small of the back. And that's only due to the idea of I've heard of cases where a person has been tackled and the gun has actually been able to hit them hard enough to damage their spine. So that's what I don't want to see, obviously. Plus, it's very hard to kind of get to that location. It's harder to get to than you think it is. But put that gun on, give it a month, give it 30 days of where it's at. Make sure that you've got a good holster, you've got a good belt, and place that there, and just put it there and try to just let it go for 30 days. I bet after the first week or two of carrying it, you're going to start realizing that it's not there anymore. It's going to not hurt as much. It's going to not bother as much. You'll become more and more used to it. Give it the time to let your body get used to it. It's pretty important. I see that a lot with new guys, is new people. They want to, oh, it digs, so then they don't carry. And that kind of defeats the purpose.
I absolutely agree with, I think, everything you said. At one point, I was carrying a really small, really lightweight revolver, and it was something that, it was probably the first gun that I actually carried regularly. And I had a gun belt, and I had a decent, respectable holster. It was a leather inside the waistband holster. And when you're not used to carrying weight around your waist on a belt, it doesn't matter what it is. It's going to feel like it's a boat anchor that's on fire. Go for a walk around a shopping mall or a grocery store, whatever, and it's going to be uncomfortable, and you're going to think that everybody else in the world can see it. As long as you aren't drawing attention to yourself, believe me, people don't care about you. They don't care what you're doing because they're too busy with their phone. They're too busy texting somebody else. They're too busy looking at what they want to buy. It's very rare that they're going to pay any attention to you. I mean, I know we've all seen people walk right into things while they're texting. I know I have. I know Alex has. It's just the way people are. But it's going to feel like you have a highlighter, and you're always going to be touching it. You're always going to be shifting. Always going to be touching it with your elbow. So it's important, like Alex said, you actually do need a gun belt. And we talked about this like just really briefly in our first show. You need a good gun belt. And it doesn't matter if it's, you know, a Cordura, is it Cordura? Scuba webbing, whatever they make them out of, or it's leather. But it has to be a gun belt because it's the platform in which your self-defense is built on. Okay, so it's got to be comfortable. It's got to keep everything in place. Your holster is just as important. It's got to be able to hold onto the gun. It's got to be able to stay in place. Okay, so your body is, around your waist. It's just like your hands. You start working out, start swinging a hammer, using a shovel, you're going to develop calluses. Your body is going to eventually get used to feeling something rubbing against your skin here or there. And if you carry inside of the waistband, you can always tuck a shirt in behind everything, and that will help mitigate some of the discomfort. And especially when you first start carrying, it's really going to be a drag. You're always going to be concerned about it, and you should be. There's definitely an adjustment period till you get used to this.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that. That the idea of it just kind of becoming you get used to it. And I know when I first started carrying, I was always checking it, patting it down, like, oh, is it still there? Can people see it? I can tell you, I have been in the middle of a very, very busy store and watched a gentleman open carry a Desert Eagle in the middle of the store. I'm not even joking. It's a big 50 cal Desert Eagle. And nobody blinked an eye. Nobody even realized he was carrying it. And I mean, I was flabbergasted. I think I followed the guy for about 15 minutes just trying to see if anybody was going to notice that he had it on his hip. And no one noticed. I mean, no one blinked an eye. No one saw it. You'll be amazed on people are oblivious. I mean, I've watched people walk into walls and walk into fountains and all sorts of stuff because they're just oblivious to the world. And I think, I don't know about you, Matt. I don't think I've ever had anybody. Oh, I have had somebody see my gun in public one time. I was loading groceries into the back of my car, and a young lady with her mom saw it and just kind of said, "Oh, a gun." I kind of turned around and I said, "It's okay. I'm supposed to have one." That was kind of my answer for it. And she was like, "Oh, okay," and went back shopping like she was supposed to be. I don't know. Have you ever had anybody see yours, Matt?
The only time I've ever had anyone ever see mine is when it was probably when I was brand new to carrying, or it's another guy that carries a gun. You kind of know what you're looking at or looking for. If you start carrying a gun and you carry it anywhere behind the blade of your hip, you'll never bend over again. If you do, your shirt's going to come up over it, and then like the world's going to know you have a gun. So you're going to learn to squat down. So if you're going to carry behind the blade of your hip, you better start doing some body squats, because you're going to do a lot of those. Okay, there's no more bending over after that. Personally, I like to appendix carry. Just works better for me. But we'll get into the weeds on that conversation another time. So I think we got off track a little bit, Alex. We're talking about picking out our first gun. We're talking about all this other stuff, which is great.
That's all right.
But, one thing that I know Alex and I talked about is we're not brand loyal. We just happen to both like the same type of gun right now. But if you could say, hey, ABC XYZ gun, it's just as good as what you got. It's better than what you got. It's whatever. One of the things you should be looking at is what is the aftermarket support for this gun that I may buy? What's the cost of an extra magazine or 5? What is it easy for me to find holsters? Is it easy for me to find aftermarket parts like sights? Can I get a different barrel? Can I get a different trigger? Can I get whatever? Who uses this gun? I mean, I personally kind of think if no SWAT team's using it, no military's using it, no police force is using it, it might not be something I want to bet my life on or my family's life on. That's just something that I take into consideration. I'm not saying that you have to, but it's something that I think about. What do you think about that, Alex?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a really important point, is to look at what guns are on the market right now, and look at who's using them. You look at a lot of the police forces have, they're kind of hard to find, but they have records of what they've used and what they've gotten rid of and what they've gone to. And you can kind of see there some big police forces will post that stuff like, oh, in 2000 whatever we bought this gun, in 2000 whatever we bought this gun. So there's some information out there as opposed to what they're purchasing and what they're using. My biggest piece of advice for choosing is do your research. Go out there, find some of the instructors that are on YouTube. There are a lot of them out there, quality, well-known instructors. Look at what they're shooting. These guys aren't sponsored by these guns, or at least not very many of them are. I don't think I know of any off the top of my head that actually are sponsored by a gun manufacturer. And see what they're shooting, see what they're using. There's a lot of great guns in the market. Read the reviews, read what's going on with them. And there are things like this, and this is like a subject I think everybody is a little bit aware of, but because a brand is really good, I'm going to use Sig Sauer as an example. They may have 20 different types of guns that are extremely good firearms. And they might have one that's having issues, like they are right now. The Sig P320, I think, is the one that they're having. They had a recall on, and there was problems with it. That means that gun has a problem. That doesn't mean all SIGs have a problem. So when you're going to pick out a firearm, look at everything that's going on. If you're looking at a specific gun, look at the reviews for that specific gun. Look who professionally is running it. Look at to see if they've had issues or problems, if somebody has big complaints. Go out and do your research. The other thing that I think is really important is that when we start talking about buying your first gun, budget comes to mind. I know it did with mine. I'm a poor kid. I don't really have a whole lot of money, so I didn't get to go out and buy the most expensive gun that I could find. And I hear that a lot from students that I've had and other people that I know that are going, well, I would really like to own blank gun, but I can't afford it. So instead, I bought this lower quality gun, hoping that that's going to do the job. And this is a delicate way or a delicate conversation to have. I would really encourage you to try to not get the lower quality guns if you can help it. This is an item that you're preparing to protect your life with. And the last thing you want is that gun to go click because of a catastrophic failure or something occurred that it broke beyond repair. Because if you're pulling your firearm out and you're preparing to shoot it and that gun goes click, that means your life is in danger. And if you don't eliminate that danger before that danger eliminates you, that's a problem. So a lot of people kind of go, well, I can't afford these better guns. And one thing I want you guys to look at is there are a lot of used guns out there right now. There's a lot of internet pages that have used Glocks and Smith & Wessons and SIGs. They may not be the caliber that you're looking for, but they're very inexpensive. They're usually in pretty darn good shape. I've bought one or two over about the last year or so, and they're in really good shape for what they are. The outside is rough, but the internals look perfect on both of the ones that I've seen. But I encourage you to go look at used guns. Go to a gun shop, try to find one that's of good quality, that's inside your price range, even if it's used. An example I see of this, and I'll try to let Matt talk in a second, is I see it a lot. I've seen it a couple times at least. Somebody goes out and they buy an expensive gun. They have a lot of problems with it, and then they come to me asking me what gun they should buy next. So they've spent $300 on a gun that they're not really going to be able to resell for what they paid for it, and then they're going to end up spending another $500 on another gun. So when it's all said and done with, you've spent $900 on two guns with one that you're not going to carry and one that you're going to end up carrying. So, try to pick one out that has good quality, good reviews, is a quality gun with what Matt said, the holster availability, parts availability, service availability, warranties. If there's warranties on the market, a lot of great gun manufacturers back up their guns pretty well, and try to get the best that you can afford. And if that means getting the best used one, then I would encourage the best used one over a cheap new one. I hope that makes sense. Matt, you got any input on that?
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned someone saying, I can't afford this better quality gun. Well, sometimes life and death decisions are made at the checkout counter, okay? That's not saying you need to go out and buy a $900 Master Blaster, whiz bang, whatever. But for instance, law enforcement will have their used guns that are trade-ins, that are typically between $250 up to $350. When you can buy one of the cheapest guns brand new, which is a high point for under maybe right around $205. But you can't buy anything for that gun. I mean, try and buy a holster for that. You can go and buy at a big box outdoors store. I'm not even going to say the brand name because they don't even deserve to have their name out there, but something that it will take any gun. It's like it might as well be a Christmas stocking, because that's all it is. You need something that will hold your gun and have some retention. Okay, so how can you afford not to? I would ask this question. Well, what are a couple of things that you do every week, every month that cost you money? We're talking about life and death, right? I mean, if we're talking about protection, we're talking about life and death. So can you stop smoking stop smoking that extra pack of cigarettes a week? Okay. Maybe don't buy a case of beer, whatever your thing is. I don't know. I have no idea. But there is a way you can responsibly cut cost enough to come up with an extra $100 so you can get a gun that is reliable, whether it's, a police trade-in, which would be a SIG or a Glock or an M&P. Those things all have great aftermarket support, holsters, sights, magazines, internal parts if you should need them. You're not talking about a lot of extra money. You're talking about, I realize $20 might as well be $1 million if you don't have a dime, but over the course of time, if you aren't frivolously spending money away on silly things, that $100 will come into your pocket quickly. So I don't know. I think that at least you buy a gun that has aftermarket support in a caliber that is available, something like 9, 40, 45, 38, 357, something like that. Now, I don't care who likes what caliber. It doesn't matter to me. As long as you can get bulk ammunition so you can take a training class and then you can practice, because just going and standing and shooting at a target, that's not helping you. You need to take a training class. You need to be able to practice what you learned in the training class, right? So you got to be able to have have availability of ammunition so you can do those things. So yeah, Alex, I agree with everything you said. I just want to brush up a couple of extra points.
No, I like it. I think everybody can always lay off the extra Starbucks. At least in my opinion. The one thing I wanted to get into a little bit as far as purchasing a gun, because one of our things is we're not really trying to push you towards one specific brand or other. We just want you to make your own mind up on a good gun. You read the reviews, but one of the things that I think is important to talk about is something that we can talk about science for a minute. We need to understand how recoil and powder loads affect the bulk of a gun. So if you have two guns and you have, for instance, a Glock 43, or 43 is the 9mm, and then a Glock 19, a 43. If you can see that, you're muted, so it's not going to show up. Matt has a 43 that he's showing us.
All right, here it is, guys.
All right.
I'll leave this up for 1 second. Hold on. Here's a 43. It's a single stack. And here's a 19. So, there's a definite size difference. Right? Okay, take it away, Alex.
All right. So what we've got to look at and understand about that is that you're talking about a controlled explosion propelling a chunk of lead and brass down a barrel at 20-some thousand feet a second, I think is what it runs itself out to. That energy has to go somewhere. And one of the things that's important is to understand that the mass of that gun and the mass of that slide, moving backward and forward, and the weight of the gun absorbs a lot of that recoil. So if you have a smaller gun like the 43, recoil and movement and energy is going to be much more pronounced in a smaller firearm, causing greater muzzle flip and more recoil into the wrists, the elbows, and the arms than a gun that's a larger gun with more weight to it. The slide is heavier, the rounds are heavier, the bulk of the gun itself is heavier. So one of the things to consider is that a smaller gun is going to be harder to control. They're harder to grip simply because they're smaller guns for most people. Some people have small hands and it works out great. Some people have, look up a YouTube video with Steve Fisher. His hands swallow a gun. He is huge. He fires a gun, you don't even know it's recoiling. It's amazing. And then you see some people have very petite hands that a smaller gun may work well in. But to consider that a 9mm in a smaller gun is the same controlled explosion that a 9mm in a larger gun has, the energy is the same, that's something to consider as well. if you're wanting to, if you're concerned about recoil and management, then the larger the gun, the easier they are going to be to manage, simply because there's more to them. They're easier to grip. They're larger. The mass is there to kind of absorb the recoil of the firearm. And then we can get into more of the science too, like barrel lengths has to do with that as well. But that's a little bit of both. That's controlled explosions, barrel lengths, and weight and mass that get into that. But that's something to consider if you're concerned about recoil. A larger firearm will control that recoil a little bit better than a smaller firearm will.
Yeah, I see this a lot in classes when I especially have very first time shooters. It happens a lot with ladies, and that's what really bugs me is some ding dong at a gun counter. It's really difficult to know if the person behind the counter knows what they're talking about, because they might not necessarily be a gun person. They might just be a person that knows how to sell things. You know, they might as well be a vacuum cleaner salesman. You know what I mean? I mean, all you need to know is this is this and this is that and blah, blah, blah. You know, this is the barrel and this is the trigger. And yeah, I really like that. Give me your money. There's the door. I see a lot with ladies is I came to class with a 3-inch barreled 45 because my husband bought it for me, or the guy at the gun counter said this is what I would be. I'm sorry. It's like, we're going to try this. This is what you brought. Hey, let's give it a rip. But typically it doesn't pan out well. And it's not because I don't know how to teach and I don't know how to instruct. It's not because I don't understand how to show someone how to operate the firearm. It's because it's the wrong fit for the person. Or there's the small, they call it J-frame revolver. It's always the tiny little revolver that you see. It's really lightweight and it's really small. It's a 38 and it can shoot 357s or whatever, right? 357s, you can shoot 38s. But it's like shooting a handful of bees. I have one. I hate it. I absolutely despise it. But I keep it so I can take it to a class and say, if that's what you want, don't buy one yet. Try mine. I mean it when I'm doing this. It's terrible. You can shoot them fairly accurately, but it's one of those bright sunshiny days at the range when everything's perfect and you can take your time, because you're looking at like these really short barrels under 2 inches. You've got a front sight and really no definitive rear sight, which it sounds fantastic because it's small. It's not going to catch on anything. When you pull it out of your appendix carry holster, or when you're fishing for it out of your purse, whichever. But they're extremely uncomfortable to shoot. It doesn't mean that you can't do it. It just means that you're probably not going to, one, take a training class with it where you're going to shoot 200, 400, 500 rounds in a day. And that's not even self-defense ammunition. So you're not going to go practice with it, because if you shot 500 rounds out of a typical J-frame, like small revolver, you'd feel like you had carpal tunnel for the next week. So,
yeah, absolutely, I agree with that. That I've shot a few of those guns, and they're hard to shoot. The thing that I want to make really clear is if you have one, if that's what you're carrying now, that's great. Practice with it. Go get training with it. If that's what you got and that's what you're rocking, that great. Do it. Use it to protect yourself. Learn how to use it. Learn how to reload it. Take it. Practice with it. Love it. If you're going out to buy a new gun, one of the biggest reasons I hear of people trying to, gun store people trying to encourage people to buy revolvers, is that I don't agree with this, but this is what I hear a lot of, is that a revolver teaches you a very good trigger pull. And I'm not going to argue if that's true or false, but that's one of the things I hear a lot of, is, well, if you learn to shoot on a revolver, you'll have a very good trigger pull. You'll have a good trigger press. And I learned to shoot on a revolver, and I'm not really the best trigger press, to be honest with you. So I don't really know, but I've heard that several times from a few different people across the board. So I'm not sure where that stems from. My opinion, a semi-automatic rifle is or a semi-automatic rifle, a semi-automatic handgun is going to be the easier to learn, the easier to control, and it's going to be a better recoil under most circumstances.
I think that comes from the revolver will give you a better trigger pull thing. It comes from the thought that you're probably looking at a full size revolver, not these dinky little things, and they're not going to beat you up while you're shooting them. And in all honesty, if you can shoot a larger revolver well, it is going to teach you to have a better trigger press, because they're a very long, heavy trigger. And if you can shoot one of those well, then yes, you are probably going to be able to shoot a semi-automatic with a lighter trigger, which is with a shorter length of pull. You probably will be able to shoot one of those better. But that's predicated on the fact that you're practicing with it. You're shooting 100 rounds a week, a month, whatever. You're getting out and using it. I'm somebody that likes to shoot my guns, and I don't like to shoot one of those little ones. Now, I have a bigger one, and it's fun to shoot. It doesn't beat you up, and it works. Alex, something I want to talk about, which is something that's very important to me, is I have in class, I bring guns. I tell people, if you don't have a gun, don't buy one. Come to class, use one of my guns. They're all the same caliber, unless we're going to, if you want to try out one of the other ones, typically don't do that, but they're all the same caliber. They're different sizes, different, some are narrow, some are wide, whatever. It gives people an idea of what they might want without having to spend the money, right? Something I hear a lot is, well, I want a gun with a safety. I want like a manual safety, put on and off for safety. And I ask why. Well, I have kids in my house. Okay, well, why do you want a safety though? Well, I just told you I have kids in my house. When my youngest son was 3 years old, he figured out, and we're not like a tech family. He figured out how to grab an iPad, figured out the password, which is only 4 digits, but he figured it out. He could do that, find the Roku app, turn on the television, and then pick his show. Okay? If you think that children today won't be able to figure out how to maneuver that safety, then you're very sadly mistaken. And I think what people don't realize is that a safety is a mechanical device that can be, first off, it can fail. Second, you can turn it off. So a safety does not relieve you of the responsibility to store your gun properly. Carry your gun on you, even at home, if it's at all possible. Why? It's the best way to know your kids can't get a hold of it. My kids, they know I carry a gun. Hey, if you want to wrestle with dad, you want to be goofy, whatever, fine. Let dad put his gun up for a minute. Let's wrestle. It can be WrestleMania all day and night long, but dad's got his gun on. Let's take care of this problem, and then we'll go play. But so the safety on the guns, great. But understand that it is not a device for you to be negligent in safety. And in safety is, I'm going to get a lot of hate on this. There's no such thing as safety when you're dealing with a firearm. A firearm it's an industrial high-speed hole puncher, okay? They are a deadly tool, right? So the only thing you can do is be responsible with it. Sorry.
An industrial high-speed hole puncher. That's pretty good. I like that. That's awesome. No, I completely agree. I was trying to figure out how to word that, and I think you did a great job. We can't look at a safety on a gun as an excuse to be negligent with it in a household with children. That's a very good way of phrasing that. You know, if you have children in your home, you have to know where that gun is, and it's got to be controlled. It's either on your hip, controlled, or in a safe, controlled. That's it. There's no other option. A safety, in my opinion, and once again, this is my opinion, is going to do nothing but slow you down when you need that gun to work the most. You're going to have to think about pulling it, dropping the safety, aiming the gun, pulling the trigger, or worse, once again, this is my opinion, loading the gun and chambering around, dropping a safety, pointing a gun, and pulling a trigger. My philosophy, and you'll hear this a lot from me, is I'm going to do every single thing that I can to give me the 0.01 second faster or better than the bad guy, because we're talking about my life. And if that means that I carry with around the chamber, I have a gun that has no safety, that has no mechanical safety that you have to actually shut off and on. One of the mythologies I think people don't really understand is that there's a big difference between a gun that has 0 safeties, which they don't make those anymore as far as I know, and a gun that has internal safeties, like a Glock, that the safeties built into the trigger set itself. There are safeties. They're just not a mechanical safety that you have to manually drop. They're inside the gun. They're built into the mechanism. So they're a little bit different. There's a big mythology behind that. It doesn't have safeties. It does. It just doesn't have ones that you have to manually drop and be thought-provoking about it. But I'm going to do everything possible to give myself that 1 second edge over the bad guy. I'm going to carry it around the chamber. I'm going to carry a gun that doesn't have a manual safety on it. I'm going to carry in a position that allows me to access my gun from as wide of a variety of positions as possible for me. And if those things give me 0.0 seconds on the bad guy, I'm going to do it. If that's new sights, new holster, new gun. If I find a gun that has auto aiming, I'm going to buy it and I'm going to carry it. Okay? If there's ever the heat-seeking shotgun, I'm on it, because that's going to give me that 0.01 second faster that I need to protect myself, my family, other people that are innocent, because that's what we're trying to do. So kind of keep that in mind, is what are we going to do to make sure that our actions are going to win? And that's what we're going to do. That's what we want to do. That's what we're all here to do, is to win. Matt, you want to win?
Oh, yeah, I always like to win. Something that Alex said about the safeties, and I talk about the safeties, but it's not that you can't have a gun with the safety and operate it well. But what Alex and I both know is that, sadly, the majority of people that own a gun and maybe take their CPL class, the majority of those people are never, ever going to take a training class. And then again, it's very different from going to the range and shooting holes in paper when you're standing still. Okay, it's very, very different to take a training class than doing that. So if you take a training class, you will learn how to unholster, which is, here, in the front of your body, in the back, whatever. Work on your draw stroke when the gun comes out. The safety's got to come off at the right time. It can't come off when it's still coming out of your holster and it's pointed at you, and it's not that you can't do it. You can, but you have to train it. And it's not something that you want to work on by yourself without having a professional instructor instruct you and give you help along the way. This is not my rights, and I've been shooting since I'm 6 year old and with my grandpappy out in the woods, and it's not the same thing. I mean, I've been driving since I'm 16 years old, right? Okay, I'm almost 37 years old, and I'm not ready for a NASCAR track. I hate NASCAR, but I'm not ready for that because it's two different things. Shooting paper standing still on a bright sunshiny day, like our good buddy Trek likes to say, I have to say it because he says on a bright sunshiny day. Shout out to you, Trek. But it's the truth. If you can't make one ragged little hole on a bright sunshiny day when you're standing still, what do you think will happen when you've never had a training class and all of a sudden it's the worst day that you could ever imagine, and you have to put all the bullets right where they have to go? It doesn't happen that way. I mean, hopefully everybody goes home that's supposed to go home, but very rarely does it work that way. And I'm sorry I got a little off topic, but training classes are so very important. We want to have all these rights, but we don't want to take any responsibility for them. And that's what is so difficult for guys that want to do this properly. Okay, it's cool to have guns and own guns, but know how to use them. And it's not just take it out of the box, put the bullets in it, go out and shoot holes in paper. There's a big difference between learning how they actually work and why and what to do, when and why, and going pew, pew, pew.
Yeah, I want to say that again. I hope I can say it like you said it. There's a big difference between how'd you phrase that? There's a big difference between our rights and taking responsibility for them.
I don't really know what I said. I think it was something like we want to have these rights, and we do have these rights. We all do, but we don't want to take the responsibility that goes along with them. So we can. I don't know. I don't really know how the best way to say it. It's not like so we can utilize them best. It's just so that we can be good stewards of what we're doing. I don't know. I really don't know how to say what it is on my mind. That's on my mind about it. But we do need to have. We have a responsibility. You can't have rights and not have responsibility. You can't just say, "Well, I have the right to have a driver's license and drive like an idiot." I mean, if Trek has said this, I've heard him say it on a show before. If I drove my car, if I ran my gun like so many people drive their cars, I'd be in jail. Right?
Yeah, I've heard him say that a few times over, I think, a couple different shows. But yeah, I think that's really important. Is this right that we have comes with responsibility, and I really find it disturbing. Is probably a good word for it. When I do my CPL classes, I give everybody the opportunity to train with me an additional 2 hours whenever they want. So if they get a new gun, a new holster, they just want to come out and shoot, they can call me up and say, "Hey, I'd like to come out and shoot this weekend," or "I got a new gun or a new holster. Can we get together and work on this together?" And out of the 2.5+ years I've been doing the CPL classes, I have had 0 people do that. I mean, that's just free range time. And I've had no one take advantage of that. And that's really important. I mean, I know there's a lot of people who grab a gun, they strap it on, they go out there, they got their training, they got their license, and they think that they're prepared to make the right decision. And I really encourage everyone to go get good training, because there's a big difference between, there's 2 things that go into training, especially with a good instructor, is one, you're going to learn how to use your gun better, and one, you're going to learn how to think better. Really important, because if you're not thinking clearly, you're going to do something like try to shoot out van tires or something like that. And that's not something that we want to see. You're going to utilize your weapon in a way that isn't rightfully able to be used, because you're not thinking well. You're not thinking beyond the point. And good instruction, good training will teach you how to use a firearm well, and it's also going to teach you how to think out some of these problems. And I think that's vital. That's very important. It's got to go beyond the initial class that you took, even if it's, hey, I can't afford this stuff. I can afford training. Some of us can't. I understand that. That's no excuse not to go online and look at the YouTube videos. There's Sage Dynamics, Practically Tactical, Will Petty. These guys have videos out there that outline pretty much everything. Go look at their videos. Go listen to them on the podcast. There's so much information there that's valuable. And don't discount all of that stuff. It's not training, but it's super valuable information. And all knowledge is worth having. So learn it.
Absolutely need to take advantage of the free information that's out there. I personally, I'm a big fan of everybody that you named off. I was actually in a 2-day class with the Practically Tactical guys, and I've become friends with them over the last year. I like those guys a lot. I like all 3 of them. They're great dudes. I listened to their show. Hell, I'm a Patreon member. Like, I'm still paying. Like, I love it. Like, I love to be able to be a part of what they're doing. I mean, they have a great show. They train and they get great guys, great trainers to come on and talk about what they're doing. Will Petty is awesome. I can't wait to train with him. I can't wait to train with Aaron Cowan. You know, no, a bunch of people that they've had on. Man, I was looking around, like, I couldn't find a pen. I forgot to take notes. It was something that you said I wanted to follow up on, but it's just escaping me at the moment. But
it's okay. It's on video.
Well, I don't know what you said, so I can't get to it now. Oh well. It's gone.
It's okay. It's okay. I think that kind of ties it up for me, as far as I don't really have much else about it. I mean, there's a lot that goes into making your first gun purchase. There really is. And I go back to that same phrase of the situation dictates. You know, does that situation dictate a smaller gun as opposed to a bigger gun? Does a situation dictate a revolver as opposed to a semi-automatic? Does the situation is that this is the only gun you have? That's great. Learn to use it well. That's the best thing that I can say. Is there's a lot of great advice out there. There's a lot of great guns out there. Do your research, learn what it's about and what they're doing, and try to get the best possible gun that you can and learn to use it.
Situation dictates is something you're going to hear a lot on this show. It's like, I don't want to say it's like a motto or anything, but it's kind of is. It's a motto. It's something that you can apply to literally anything in your life. I talked to Alex about this a little bit earlier today. I said, a bride is not going to wear running shoes on the day of her wedding. You know, situation dictates that she wears a certain type of shoe. You're not going to drive a Ferrari down a dirt road. That probably requires a truck. So it really does apply to everything. If you work in an office setting and you have to look professional, and a small revolver is all you can easily and comfortably carry, well, hey, you know what? You might have a little bit longer of a learning curve, or a little more of a steep learning curve to deal with, but you know what? You'll get there. But it does take practice, it takes time, and it takes commitment, okay? So I know I poo-pooed a few of the guns and some models, not any brands, but I did, have some things to say about some models. It doesn't mean that you can't do it. You absolutely can. It just takes some determination to do it. It takes your time, which that's a valuable thing. We only have so many hours in a day. That's why it's almost 1:15 in the morning, and we're finally doing this show, because we both have full-time jobs. We have wives. We have kids. He goes to school full-time. We do what we can when we can, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that's really the important thing to remember is the situation dictates. But I guess kind of ending in my advice is to, in my opinion, get the largest, most comfortable gun that you can carry, that you feel comfortable with, of the best quality. If it's used or new, whatever fits that budget. Um, but go for it. And once again, the reason I go for the large as opposed to a small frame like the Glock 43 over the 19. So I'm going to pick the 19. They're easier to control. They have higher capacity. Um, in this day and age, I think capacity is really, really important. If your situation says that you got to go for something on the smaller side, great. Carry extra ammo with you. Learn to reload well and learn to put shot placement where it counts. Um, I really think that's about the best advice I can give. There's a lot of great guns in the market. Um, go read the reviews. Go read what people have to say about those guns. You'll see reviews out there of guns that fire when you drop them, or their safeties don't work. That I can't. There's so many guns with so many problems. You're going to have to just search what ones you're interested in and find out what people have to say about them. But take those reviews to heart and really look at it and see if there's something else. If you look at a gun and it goes, wow, the reviews go, nah, this isn't really the best option. What else is out there that's in that price range? What else is used out there in that price range? Search until you find the absolute best that you can do. Don't settle. This is a life and death thing that we're talking about. This is a tool that you're going to use to protect you, your loved ones, and innocent people that you may not even know. You don't want it to go click. You want it to go bang every single time. So make the best decision that you can. That's about all I got, Matt. You got anything on this subject? And then we'll kind of close it down.
I do. I have a couple things if we have time for it. If you are very new to this and you want to buy a gun before you take a class, after you take a class, it doesn't matter really. Something that's really good to do is realize that you do or don't know about guns. Go into a gun shop and be very honest. It's like anything. Everybody that's watching this, you have something that you know about. Like, you can smell when someone is lying about how much they know about whatever the topic is, right? No different with this. If you go into a gun shop and say, hey, I don't really know what I'm doing with this yet. I'm looking to buy a gun. And if they say that's what you need right there, young man, young lady, sir, miss, ma'am, whatever. If they tell you what you need for your life, you're in the wrong place or you're talking to the wrong salesman. Something you can do is ask people in your lives that own guns. Maybe find out if there's a local range that has competitions, because those guys and gals that shoot a lot, they love to help people. They absolutely do. But you have to be honest and say, hey, I'm learning. I don't know what my next step is. Would you be willing to help me? I promise you, somebody at a competition or a gun club, they will love to help you. Okay? So I think that's about it for me tonight.
All right, excellent. I think I'll leave it with this on a side note: is there are no absolutes. If somebody says this is the end-all gun, it's probably not. So keep that in mind. I do want to say a quick piece. In this day and age, we've got to take a moment to think about some of the tragedies that occur in our world. And I wanted to put it out there that our hearts and minds are out for Texas right now with the local, the latest occurred. It's something that it hurts me every time I hear something like this that happens. And it's just senseless, useless violence. And whether it was a bomb or a gun, it really doesn't matter. My heart goes out to these people and the pain that they're feeling. And you're in our thoughts for sure. and we hope someday, if I think everybody does, that the violence just stops, regardless of what kind it is. But unfortunately, I don't think that's the case.
Right. For me, guys, if you you made it through this whole show, and you have questions about anything we've had to say, or if there are things that you would like us to talk about in an upcoming show, we'll be doing another show next week. Put comments in the bottom of the video, or find our YouTube or not our YouTube page. Well, definitely, yeah, find our YouTube page because you're here. Please subscribe.
Yeah, absolutely.
Find our Facebook page is what I meant to say, and please like that and follow it. We'll be letting you know, and we'll have more shows and then any events that we're going to have upcoming. Yeah. Please ask questions. Tell us what you would like to hear us talk about. Okay?
Yeah, that's absolutely. You know, our Facebook page is So Gun. So Facebook, So You Got a Gun. Like and share. We'll appreciate it. Put us out what we want so we can make sure that we're giving you guys. So I hope you guys have a good evening, and thanks for watching the show. Have a good night.